We're expecting, got 29, I see, Lisa. Should we kick off or wait a minute or two?
We had close to 80 RSVPs, but, you know, with a change, I would suggest we kick off because just to be mindful of time.
Perfect. Cool. Okay, welcome everybody. I think, God, actually, I can't even see the room as I normally do, so I'm not going to say most of you know me because I'm not sure exactly who's here. So welcome. For those that don't know me, my name is Durgan. I'm with Deloitte and responsible for our partnership and sponsorship between Deloitte and ORT, which has been going for quite a few years and something that we value, working with Lisa and the team, and the many speakers that we've had in front of us and the community, which is no different tonight. So welcome. As Lisa's mail said, I think the theme tonight was disruption, and we had exactly that with disruption in the event. As you saw, we went virtual, not because of any COVID outbreak or venue issue, but just due to some logistics between getting speakers from various regions here. And we thought it would be beneficial unless we had all three speakers present in person, it might be a bit of a challenge to do part virtual, part in person. So hopefully everyone appreciates that. I think the value of the talks will not be any less by being online. I'm sure you've all got a whiskey, a glass of wine, something at the end of the day. So enjoy, put on your videos if you want to. So welcome. I'm going to quickly introduce the three speakers. So with us tonight, we have Saul Kornik, Whitehead, and Joel Kaplan. Saul has a varied background ranging from healthcare to technology to finance to machine learning to culture change. Health Force, the web application, and Kina Health, the smartphone app, aim to lower costs to give access to million more people while improving quality throughout clinical teamwork. Prior to Health Force and Kina, Saul co-founded Africa Healthcare Placements, an organization that works to get doctors to where they are needed most. Pioneered Tsiba's Sorry, I haven't got the screen there. Oh, you've got it up. Thanks, Lisa. I'm reading off a different one. Pioneered Tsiba's fundraising and sustainability initiatives from the beginning and conceptualized Tsiba's entrepreneurship curricula. Gia also consults to a few other organizations, including the Center for Analytics and Behavior Change, where she heads up fundraising, the driving of strategy and sustainability, and also sits on the United Hertz Schools board as an independent governor. And lastly, Joel always looked for every way he could to get out of the classroom during his schooling years. When he left school, he jumped straight back into the education space. And after 7 years, Joel founded Thought Hybrid International School. Joel says, I'm considered to be one of those millennials, excuse me, that could change the future. And with our vision to shape a new world by giving all of Africa's children access to the greatest thought leaders. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to hand over to Saul first. I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone tonight. So thank you again to our speakers for joining us and to the rest of the community that are here. So Saul, thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Lisa and Nicole, for hosting this event. My name is Saul Kornik. I'm the co-founder of a couple of health tech companies. I've got a few slides to show you about the kind of things we're building. But let me start by describing the problem we're trying to solve, because without that problem, we have no reason to exist. The reality is that the vast majority of South Africans, and Africans for that matter, are locked out of quality healthcare because of cost. Only 16% of South Africans had private healthcare insurance cover, and 84%. Sorry, we got someone chatting. Someone want to ask a question. We've only 84% of South Africans are locked out of that quality private healthcare system because they simply can't afford to be in there. So the question is, why is it so expensive? And the root of all evil in the healthcare system, and there may be some doctors on this call, is fee for service. The fee for service is when you pay someone for delivering a service, not necessarily for achieving an outcome. You go to the doctor sees you, gives you some medicine, you pay the doctor, the GP 600 Rand or the pediatrician 1,500 Rand. You walk out the door, you may or may not get better afterwards, you may have to go back. And so the incentives in the healthcare system in a fee-for-service environment is not necessarily to make you better, although doctors are often so dedicated and want to do so. The incentive in the healthcare system overall is to see you as many times as possible and to send you and to, at times, duplicate the effort of other clinicians in the healthcare system because that other clinician hasn't shared their patient information with you because they're going to lose the income from that patient. And so fee-for-service environments generally drive up the cost of healthcare at a system level, even though there may be individuals who are doing their best to care for patients. What this means is that as healthcare costs go up, health insurance premiums go up. As health insurance premiums go up, people drop down to hospital plans. Hospital plans then drive people to hospitals for care. Hospital care is much more expensive. And you go to hospitals for care either because you're so sick that you need to go to the hospital or because you unnecessarily go to the hospital because otherwise Discovery won't pay. It drives up the cost of healthcare even more, which means premiums go up even more, which means that the young and healthy people now are dropping off health insurance plans completely. The consequence of that is that only sick old people are left in these health insurance pools to be cared for. They're more expensive people to care for, which drives up the cost of care even more. Premiums go up and this vicious cycle continues. So the reality is that in the healthcare system in South Africa and private sector where the highest quality care is delivered, often it's way too expensive for anyone to be able to afford. And so we set out at Health Force to try and solve that problem. Could we lower the cost of care at the same time improving health outcomes? Now, healthcare is a funny thing like this. You can often lower the cost and improve health outcomes. A classic example of this is for those people, for women who are pregnant. So I'll take a bet. I can't see all of you here, but I'll take a bet that anyone here with a child has had that child through cesarean section. That's my bet. And I've got an 80% probability of getting that right. Because all of you would have had private sector care. You would have been looked after by an obstetrician gynecologist. And when an obstetrician looks after a woman who's pregnant, there's an 80% probability that that woman will have a cesarean section. However, when you're looked after by a midwife, that probability comes down to 20%. That means that 60% of the women in private sector South Africa are getting very expensive cesarean sections with a theatre and a surgeon and an anaesthetist and the whole thing, with much more complications for mother and child when it's unnecessary, with much longer recovery times than they need to be getting. Classic example here, let the midwife who's trained to do primary care, who's trained to do antenatal care and natural vaginal deliveries, let them look after a pregnant woman. You bring that rate down to 20%, the system pays less, and the health outcomes for women and for their children are much better. This is the problem we're trying to solve. So let me share some slides and show you some of the ways in which we're solving it. Okay, cool. So the two companies that I want to talk about today, the one is Health Force, and actually one of the founding doctors in Health Force is on this call today, Dr. Saul Kornik. He's not the rugby player, but he's even more important because he is delivering team-based care to millions of people across South Africa through our platform. And then Kenna Health is a more recent product that we launched recently. This graph here shows life expectancy versus healthcare spend throughout the world. And what you can see here is that South Africa spends a lot per person, but gets very little for that spend. And that's this point that I'm making now, that in private sector, the way it's structured in South Africa, drives up the cost of care. And as you drive up the cost of care, you don't necessarily improve health outcomes. In fact, you can reduce health outcomes by sending people unnecessarily to hospital. This is a picture I took at a rural hospital in the Northwest Province in South Africa. In the background, you can see the gates to Ghanisa District Hospital. And in the foreground, you can see someone's actually picked up their home and moved that home to the gates of this hospital. Now, the reason they've done that, and I visited this hospital myself, obviously, is because people are coming and queuing for doctors at this hospital for at least 1, if not 2 nights. So they bring a blanket and they sleep in the queue to see the doctor. That's how short of resources government sector can be. Not only that, but these people are often so sick that they need to come back to see the doctor multiple times a month or a year. And so it makes much more sense for them to just move their houses to the gates of the hospital. We're trying to solve this problem for those people. Well, we're a tech company at heart, which means that we build products and we code it into software. And very important in the software development process is that although the end goal we may have in mind, which looks quite grand, is not, we understand, we build the smallest usable part first, and then we build on that part step by step. So instead of building the rocket that goes to Mars and saves people from the asteroid that hits the Earth, as Elon Musk, that's your aim in life. We start by building the bicycle that just gets you to the first piece of healthcare that you need, and then we build the moped and the car, and eventually we'll get to the rocket. So with that in mind, what is the first piece of this healthcare puzzle that we've built? Well, it's called HealthForce, and what it does is it turns every nurse in a clinic into a place of specialized care. So let me show you how it works. You walk into a clinic room. These clinics are situated in pharmacies around South Africa. So they're bricks and mortar clinics with a nurse sitting in the back. I don't know if you've been to a Durgan, for example. There's a dispensary, and next to the dispensary is a nurse-run clinic. It's those nurses I'm talking about. That nurse is using the HealthForce software. And that software allows the nurse to do everything the nurse has been trained to do. Not just vitality health checks, not just weighing babies and doing baby vaccinations, but the full scope of healthcare services the nurse has been trained to deliver. Everything from colds and flu, UTIs, there's a number of conditions that nurses are often able to treat. These nurses capture information onto the HealthForce system, and 80% of the time, using the HealthForce technology, the nurses are able to solve the patient's problem. That means that 80% of the time, the problem is solved for about 90 Rand rather than the 500 or 600 Rand of the GP. But the kicker is when the nurse cannot diagnose or prescribe for the patient, she clicks a button, and on average 3 minutes later, a doctor appears on a flat screen TV in the clinic room. And the doctor can see the patient and nurse. The doctor can also see all the clinical notes that the nurse has captured. From there, the doctor works with the nurse to resolve the patient's problem and can provide a sick note, a referral letter, or a prescription to the patient, which the nurse then prints out for the patient. The patient walks across to the dispensary and collects, and hopefully they leave that clinic feeling, I felt cared for. Now, what this means is that 80% of the time, we can serve patients at only 90 Rand. And the other 20% of the time where the doctor is needed, because the nurse has done the bulk of the consultation, they've done the fluff at the start. You know, hi Lisa, how's your family? How's ORT going? Has collected your vital signs, has done physical examinations, has done your medical history. Because the nurse has done all of that work, we only need the doctor for a few minutes, which means we can bring the cost of the doctor down drastically as well. So overall, using this setup, we've been able to reduce healthcare costs for basic GP conditions by 45% over going straight to the physical GP, and much more conveniently, because this is now at any one of number of 500 clinic rooms around the country. The health insurers love us because we're able to lower the claims that patients make from their medical schemes. In fact, we are reimbursed by we have schemes that cover over 50% of the covered lives in South Africa, reimbursing for their services with HealthForce. So if any of you are Discovery members or members of any of these other medical schemes, you can actually go into any Dis-Chem or other pharmacy around the country, and your medical scheme will pay for you to get the script that you need from the doctor and to talk to the nurse in the process. What's great about technology is you can collect a wealth of data. So what HealthForce is able to do is to collect a lot of data and aggregate it to understand what the demographics are of the data, how different doctors are performing, helping to coach the doctors to improve their performance, how the nurses are performing, and how we can improve the nurses' performance, what the common conditions are that we're seeing, and to build technology that then allows the clinicians to do better work and the clinicians to be set up to serve the kind of conditions that we're seeing on the HealthForce system. As I mentioned, we're in 500 clinic rooms around the country. We've got over 700 nurse users. We've done over 2.65 million nurse consultations, and we've delivered over 160,000 telemedicine consultations over the last 4.5 years that we've been running. The average wait time to see our doctor without having made a booking is only 3 minutes. That means you walk into the nurse room, you say, I need a repeat script for my contraceptive, or I need a script for my hypertension. She clicks a button, and on average, only 3 minutes later, the doctor is there to provide you with what you need. We've got a 4.95 out of 5 rating by our patients as well. After every consultation, a patient of ours will get an SMS where they're able to rate our service. Let me tell you a story of a man living in rural Limpopo. 62-year-old man living on government grants in Limpopo in Leboa. He was covered head to toe in this rash. He went to the government clinic. There was a 3-hour queue to wait to see the nurse there. There was no doctor available there. He thought, I can't stand in this queue with this rash. I'm going to take a bit of my money and I'm going to spend it to go and see a private nurse. And he went into a local pharmacy that Health Force supports in this area. The nurse took a look at him and said, well, I really don't know what's wrong with you. If it's okay, can I call one of the Health Force doctors? She clicked a button, and a few minutes later, the Health Force doctor appeared on the screen. The nurse used her smartphone to upload some pictures. We also have integrated digital devices for those pharmacies that can afford it. She uploaded some pictures to the system, and the doctor took a look at this and said, listen, I need a second opinion. The doctor then sent those pictures to a dermatology group in Johannesburg that the doctor worked with. And the dermatologist confirmed that this is a rare skin condition called pemphigus. The doctor provided the prescription. The man collected his medication from the dispensary, and within a day he looked better, and within a month the condition was almost completely cured. So this man, he never left Leboa. He saw a nurse in Leboa, a nurse in Leboa. He saw a nurse in Leboa. He saw a GP in Cape Town. He saw a dermatologist in Johannesburg, and he paid the princely sum of 175 Rand for that experience, all in the space of 45 minutes. The interesting thing is that same week, one of the C-suite executives of the big banks in South Africa came into a clinic we support in Bryanston, Johannesburg, and saw the same doctor on the same system. That's what technology is able to do, to level the playing fields and to provide the same quality, high quality care to a CEO of a bank as to a man living on government grants in a rural area in this country. So that's Health Force, taking nurse-run clinics and supercharging them by allowing them to work as a team with a virtual doctor as necessary, and skilling those nurses up to do the most they're able to do, thereby lowering the cost and improving health outcomes. But our ambition at Health Force was never just to create a clinic system. We really want to bring together teams of healthcare workers in this way, where the most appropriate person in the team can care for the patient, and the lowest cost person can care for the patient. So let the nurse do the nurse's work at lower cost, and only use the doctor for the specialist skills. That's what we always set out to do. And so the next touch point we created for this is called Kena Health. Kena Health was launched on 9th of March this year. It is a smartphone app that allows you to talk to a nurse, a GP, or a mental health professional via text, voice, or video. Let me show you a quick video of how it works. So that's Kena Health. I encourage you all to download it on your phone It's a low-cost healthcare service. There we go. That's had exceptional traction since launch. Remember, we've only been in the market for 6 months with this. Our marketing campaigns have generated 80 million impressions. So not only what we're doing is we're educating the market about this new kind of service, low-cost healthcare on your smartphone with a team of healthcare workers to look after you. Of that 80 million impressions that we've generated through our marketing, 64 million have been through digital channels. Over 400,000 people have clicked through to see what Kenna is about. Over 90,000 people within the space of 6 months have downloaded our app. 30,000 have registered, and we've delivered today we've delivered over 20,000 consultations to people via their smartphones, all in the space of 6 months. Now, this is phenomenal traction for a consumer-facing app in South Africa. But the thing I'm most proud of is that our Google Play Store rating is 4.8 out of 5. So I ask you, when was the last time you downloaded an app that is 4.8, that has 100,000 downloads, that is a 4.8 rating? The quality of the service through Kenna is exceptional. Now, our goal with Kenna and with Healthforce is to serve 75 million people across the continent over the next 10 years. And that will make us one of the big 3 telehealth companies in Africa. When it comes to Kenna, go to kenna.health and download the app. The price point, just to give you a sense, the price point for a nurse in a clinic is 90 Rand. And if you need to see the doctor, it's an additional 115 to 240 Rand, depending on the consult type and the pharmacy you're in. Every Dis-Chem, every Medicare, many SPAR pharmacies, TLC pharmacies, and independent pharmacies around the country. Kenna Health, when you call up a doctor on Kenna Health, or a nurse or mental health professional, whether you see just the nurse or the nurse and doctor, or the nurse, doctor, mental health professional, whatever you need, it's 185 Rand for a consultation from the comfort of your home, high quality service, and that's what you're trying to do. So while price point is built for the majority of South Africa, we're actually finding that 20% of our consults are being done to people who have Discovery cover, who have iOS smartphones, Apple smartphones, who could definitely afford to go to their doctor. But it's just that the quality of the service and the convenience is so great that they're still using it as well. And that's what we want to do. We want to serve every South African. We're actually raising funding for Kenna. We've got a great team. We've had great traction so far. We've got a good product market fit. And we're working with some amazing partners, not least of which is Dis-Chem and obviously Healthforce to promote the Kenna product. And that is what Healthforce and Kenna are up to. And at this stage, I think we can do questions at the end. So at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Gia from Tiba.
Thanks, Saul. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's hard to come in after that. Very a phenomenal model. Amazing. So yeah, good evening, everyone. I come from the education space, and I see myself as a social entrepreneur who's passionate about creative education and innovation and leadership and entrepreneurship as a means to inspire job creators. And so tonight I'd like to present CIBA, which is a business school that I founded, as a sustainable and effective model in the development of social justice, and in particular in addressing the challenge of youth unemployment in South Africa. So I'd like to share some of my learnings and experiences in the entrepreneurial space, and how we encourage creativity and entrepreneurship and innovating entrepreneurship through education, with a philosophy to see education really as a catalyst to unlock the best of what people can be. And that's with purpose lived being a value that CIBA really espouses in practice. And this has given rise to numerous opportunities, which has benefited the lives of thousands of young people to be job creators and leaders. And I'll give some practical examples of what we've done in the classroom and with our entrepreneurs. So I'm just going to put on a presentation mode. So CIBA Business School is a registered non-for-profit business tertiary institution. And as an early pioneer of access to tertiary education through fully funded tuition fee scholarships. And since 2004, we started offering fully funded, high quality tertiary business education to young people who, as a consequence of either academic or financial barriers, were struggling to get ahead post-matric or grade 12. And so given the stark, difference between the national youth unemployment rate of almost 60% presently, and how this number shrinks to less than 10% when armed with a tertiary degree, CEBA is really focused on helping deserving young people who traditionally were excluded gain access to tertiary education and to succeed therein. So for us in doing this, our work has really been to transition talented young people from unemployability into active economic citizenship through quality entrepreneurial education and leadership development. And this is really paramount given the massive levels of youth unemployability in South Africa. And our path to this has to be to build a unique, relevant, and sustainable non-for-profit private higher education institution of choice, and where increasing numbers of students aspire, as well as employers will recruit talent from. And so we have two qualifications. We have undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications. The first is and I'll get to that now. But we really see ourselves as a social enterprise. So there's a business school, which is the non-for-profit. We have an Ignition Academy, which is where we do our for-profit arm doing work in the enterprise and supply development and entrepreneurial education space, and a trust, which is really there to build our endowment. And together, that's where we can really, grow and build. So our vision is to challenge the status quo of business education through a values-based approach to teaching and learning in a changing world. And our mission is to invest in purpose-driven humans and emerging businesses who lead social change. I'll skip some of these. We have, as I've said before, most of our students, they are from marginalized, economically excluded youth, and they really transcend poverty. And whilst most of them really come from, families who are on the brink of poverty, they're still bright and ambitious and committed to building their lives and their own communities, as they are to building South Africa. So CEBA is really unique in providing a rich, relevant business education. We have a certificate program, which is a foundation program, which really looks at the basics in terms of business, but also life skills and understanding who you are and bridging gaps in literacy and numeracy. And then a business degree, which is a 3-year Bachelor of Business Administration degree in entrepreneurial leadership. And really what differentiates CEBA is this model. And we talk about a profile of graduateness. And for us, that speaks to not only the entrepreneurial and business knowledge, but also the experiential skills and attitude that sits at the heart of what CEBA does. And so at CEBA, we've always been brave and pioneering and maybe naive. And for example, I'd like to speak about my co-founder, Lee. When she was invited to speak at a TEDx, she chose a topic that was quite controversial. And she began her talk called The Soul of Education. And she said, today I want to take a risk. I'm going to read this. When we think about education, we usually think about people's heads and about facts and theories and filling them with that. More and more, we're realizing that emotional intelligence plays a role and that we need to bring in fun and emotional engagement to enhance the learning experience. We're even willing to acknowledge that our bodies have a wisdom that needs to be integrated into the classroom, but talk of the soul is still a taboo. And so education with soul, it really helps us to find our passion and our purpose, and it asks powerful questions more than it gives answers, and it requires teachers to become mentors and coaches. And it's an approach that is fit for the 21st century and increasingly turbulent times we're living in, not the factory style approach to teaching that was designed in the industrializing 20th century and still sadly persists today. And so the ethos of purpose-driven education is the foundation of which all CEBA's curriculum is built. And this runs throughout all our programs. And so the core subjects, which underpin excellent business education and are necessary, and they provide an info, but it's not sufficient to really achieve education, specifically entrepreneurial, which inspires graduates to act in caring citizenship, which our future is uncertain at best and bleak at worst. So the education ethos goes beyond placing leadership and the theme of purpose lived at the heart of all our curricula. So all our students in this attitude space, they spent years exploring questions of who I am, what is success, how do I add value, and what is my work? And these are questions we must all answer. So, you know, and this, when we find them and inspire us, we can each build our unique stories. And it inspires action and builds better communities and sustainable ecosystems. So, yeah, and what's really important and powerful for me as a success is that, you know, notwithstanding where our students come from, we've really been able to produce like disproportionately amount of Mandela Rhodes Scholars, Kofi Annan Scholars. We have an over 90% employment rate. So our students, whilst they came from very little, are really flying, and we've got amazing success stories. CEBA also has, I spoke about the Ignition Academy, and this is our for-profit arm, which is really looking at the whole enterprise and supplier development space. And we've done a lot of work in supporting entrepreneurs and helping them grow their businesses and using that as examples in the classroom, so that our students are engaging with real entrepreneurs too. So some examples, and I'll speak to that. We run a program called Level Up, and there's lots of short courses and ways in which we can generate income, not only for our students, but for other people to reach. But at entrepreneurship at CEBA, and sorry, I'm going to go back to this, is credit bearing. And, you know, it's really a key major that integrates all the areas in our curriculum. And so our students engage with the real businesses, and CEBA itself tries to run like a business to role model and to show that we're also running in a creative entrepreneurial way. So the course material, and I think I've got John Durr, who's on this call as well, who heads up entrepreneurship at CEBA. He speaks about some of the course material where our students are dealing with design thinking, mindset training, lean startups, sprints, looking at the locus of morale and where an idea is put into action, and then really into deliverables and running. So it's really not just about teaching from the textbook. It's experiential. There's presentations. Mentorship is important. You know, it's learning to be messy, to be vulnerable, about chaos and unknown. And we've run a lot of interventions with other universities where we bring students from Northeastern University in Boston for many years to come and do entrepreneurship course with our students. We have people from North Carolina University. We run an online program with the Netherlands, with Fontes University, and many other opportunities where students are engaged. We run business circles, and we have a business battle where entrepreneurs are put forward and rewarded. So I'll just give some examples of that. Here is one of our entrepreneurs, Sindile Mavunla. He came out of CEBA. He runs now a successful business called Kailicha Cycles, and he is now the first bicycle mayor of Cape Town and is doing amazing things around trying to build bicycle lines and bring people out on the streets. And it's an incredible story to follow. Another example, this is one of our students who's actually still studying her degree, and she is running a cosmetics business and is one of the first students who's actually come to us the other day and said, I want to pay it forward, I want to give back, and now she's donating back to Tsiba. Another success story is Lavo Yorani. You may have heard of Salulu Lutu. He came out of Tsiba, and he's now runs a tech business throughout Cape Town and other parts of South Africa. And yeah, so he says, I remember our first training center, there was nothing. They were had a roof, you know, with leaking water. And now they've trained over 60,000 people, you know, across the country. So yeah, so many examples, and I'll stop there. We have a trust, which is what I set up in 2007 to not only make sure that Tsiba is here for the long run, but to look at other broad-based economic empowerment opportunities. And so we offer a full solution in terms of the codes, and it's about building long-term endowment so that our students we can see through cohort through, and that we're here for the long run. Yeah, so we've awarded 7,500 scholarships. We have an over 90% of our students who are studying further or doing postgrad or working, employed, or running businesses, and many other amazing success stories. And we really, what's a cool number for me is, you know, what our graduates are returning back to the economy, and even more in terms of their communities and what they've done, and compared to the negative effect of not working or not studying, and what it does for their families, who most of them are, you know, first generation university students who've never had people who have walked that road before, and now are really making a difference for themselves and their family and their community. And so pay it forward and social responsibility plays a huge part in as well what we teach. So these are just some of our students and comments. Humanizing business education. I've spoken about all of this. And yeah, so really just to leave a few words, I'm going to stop sharing, is I'd like to, you know, as I said, outside of the formal curriculum, it's really about purpose and leadership and entrepreneurship and inspiring, you know, which is at the essence, and that makes the most impact. And another thing I'm doing outside of the formal curriculum is leading Tsiba's efforts on the soul of education. And I've been running a purpose-led podcast series, which you can see on social media, to hear inspiring people in all different walks of life, speaking about their stories and how they found their purpose. You know, people wanting a better planet and a gentler humanity. And so I'd like to just read from a piece from David Orr's book, which is called, his book is Ecological Literacy, it's titled Educating Our Children for a Sustainable World. And he supports this approach. And when he observes, there is a myth that the purpose of education is to give one the means for upward mobility and success. The plain fact is that the planet does not need more successful people. The world desperately needs more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every kind. And it needs people who live well in their places. It needs people of moral courage willing to join the fight to make the world habitable and humane. And these qualities have little to do with success as we have defined it. Thank you. I'd like to hand over to Joel.
Thank you.
And Joel, yeah, about disrupting also the status quo of education.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'd like to first start this keynote with a small experiment, if you don't mind. Please entertain me for just literally 10 seconds. If you don't mind taking your cell phone or some sort of a piece of glass around you and see if you can mist up the glass that's in front of you, just with your breath. Could you please mist it up a little bit? Have a look at the mist that you've created. This is going to sound really lame, but that ability that you have is a blessing in itself. And I'd like to start by saying thank you so much. And I have a lot of gratitude for all of you taking the time on this fine Wednesday evening to be a part of what we have to say with regards to disruptive tech. As entrepreneurs, I think I can speak on behalf of Gia as well as Saul that it's always a privilege to be able to have an audience that is interested to listen in what we're doing. So thank you so much for being here. Hi, my name is Joel. I've formerly been working in education for about 6 years. I've managed to work with companies like Google, Acer, Jaguar. I've won multiple awards. I've garnished a few 100,000 followers on social media. But at the end of the day, as a human being, I still experience stress, anxiety, depression, all these other things that have come into play. And as an entrepreneur, this was never part of my talk, by the way. Gia inspired this part. As an entrepreneur, I only really worked it out today that this journey is incredibly difficult. I don't really recommend entrepreneurship lightly to anyone to go and start a business or get something going. And while I've seen lots of success along the way, I've seen even more failure. And the reason I bring this up is those failures were extremely important for me to go through in order to get to a space where I'm at now, to be able to learn from it and reference it and so on. So to get started with my talk, I greatly appreciate you all being here, and let's hope this is not a failure. So this evening, I'm going to be talking about education, how things are working in education, what we do in education, and I hope you can all see my screen. If possible, someone let me know. Thumbs up would be great. Cool. So if you're exposed to the term artificial intelligence, you'll know that Siri or Amazon or Google use it to some extent with regards to machine learning and stuff. So I thought we would do something a little bit fun. While we are all sitting listening to the rest of my keynote, if you can make it through, I have left a message in the Zoom chat where you can vote on some AI-generated artwork to be created. So if anyone would like to go and choose the reactions, which include, you'll see it in the chat. I think I gave it to everyone. The first emoji is the clapping hands. So it's people listening to online talk about disruptive tech. The second emoji that you can choose is the thumbs up for if COVID destroyed the world. And the third one is an educated society. And just to repeat, once those reactions come through, we'll be able to create that AI artwork in the background and present it at the end of the discussion. So feel free to hit the reaction button if you've got it. We're trying to make this interactive and fun. Anyone able to see that reaction button? I'll show you how to do it. This one. And then I'm on my own here with the reactions. I think so. Anyways, I'll move on. So I founded a company called Thought Hybrid International School. And over this time, as I said, we've managed to work with a couple of cool companies. But I thought I would share how it actually all started. I was fortunate enough to work with a Scottish engineer who managed to teach me a range of different skills and tools that weren't directly related to school. And as it was said in my bio, I did absolutely everything that I could to get out of the classroom just to spend time with a retired old engineer where we would invent and create items for people with any sort of disability or an injury. So that included off-terrain mobility scooters, it includes specialized bidets, it include washing and cleaning apparatuses, and all sorts of things. And I was merely just his skivvy, and I had to pass him tools and so on. And this went on from the ages of about 9 to about 16, where he subsequently is really retired now. And that relationship now is not really there anymore. But what it did leave me with was these skills that I had in grade 10, where I'd realized that my time in school just felt like an absolute waste. And I was given the opportunity on multiple occasions to drop out of my formal education, which I didn't take, unfortunately. And I couldn't wait to that day to write that final matric exam so that I could finally get out of the classroom and start going into what I really wanted to do. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but was starting to educate the youth of Africa. And this became a huge passion of mine when I'd realized that Africa was ripe with creativity, it was ripe with natural resources, ripe with people ready to learn and that willingness to learn, but that access to education just wasn't quite there yet. So shortly after leaving school, I had managed to build tech labs for private schools, where we would try and act as a catalyst for some educational change. But year after year, we had noticed that the policies that are in place from a government level are unfortunately not, they're too restrictive to allow for this creativity. And if you look at the education system, and it's almost a cliche nowadays to talk about it, but there's this hierarchy of importance in terms of subjects. You have your mathematics at the top, your languages, your sciences, your humanities, and then your creative subjects right at the bottom. And this was coined by a famous TED Talk that arguably made TED Talks what it is today, which is, do schools kill creativity? And we see it with children and with many studies that things are not working with children in schools. The one-size-fits-all model just doesn't seem to work. And after the many years of trying to work with schools, both private, public, Model C schools, etc., I'd realized that my efforts were futile in trying to make any sort of a change as long as those students were still being prepared towards a test and still being prepared towards that final exam, that final matric result, and that was the ultimate outcome. And I'd realized that within the school system, that change could only be very slight, and it would only also work if teachers were motivated to do it, and then also teachers have already got enough on their plate. So trying to add all these additional things to it just didn't gel very well. And as part of one of my failures, or what I refer to as temporary defeat, was we launched a company that did extremely well with building tech labs, but subsequently completely folded because we couldn't keep up with the growth that we'd had. And it put me back a few years to try and now rework out what was the new direction I wanted to take. Then COVID came along, and it was obviously a disruptive time for everyone. And instead of continuing to pursue what we managed to do online, we subsequently ended up building a WhatsApp chatbot, which is where you see these images coming from, where it gave students the opportunity to be able to build educational challenges and educational activities based off resources we'd given to private school kids. And what we'd noticed is that once we connected them on WhatsApp, and then once they'd earned data and won some laptops or whatever their case was, is that these children were equally as competent as students that were in 90,000 Rand or 120,000 Rand private schools. And we needed to now start leveling the playing field. Which now brings me to March last year in 2021, where I delivered a keynote speech to government, a bunch of private education institutions, and the discussion was this change that was needed. And I saw this almost sense of disappointment in the management that was there, along with everyone that was listening, not in me, but in the idea that while we're all wanting this change in the education space, it doesn't seem to be viable in terms of policy crushing it. So I'm tired of seeing matric certificates and people coming along looking for jobs saying, I've got a matric, then I've got some sort of a degree or a course in marketing or coding or whatever the case is. And they fundamentally just don't have the real world skills to be able to navigate that space. As Gia and as Saul pointed out very well with their presentations, is that things have drastically changed in these last 2 years and 3 years. It's this ongoing change that's going to happen. And we talk about, again, more of a cliche that education needs to change, but it seems that the solutions are really slow and from a policy level and from government level. So we've taken it upon ourselves to start looking at what this change will actually look like. So this is what some of our students are actually up to on an average day. If I may share quickly, I'm going to change the order a bit. So we've got Reese, who's 16. He's currently doing an IGCSE program, which is a remote learning thing so that he can still get some sort of a qualification should he want to study further. But the most of his time, you could say 70% of it is creating his own business, doing his own thing. We've got young kids creating small robots. We've got us learning sustainable living, older kids learning with younger kids. And it's all going towards this idea of creating a new standard of competency in different technologies around sustainable living and technology, as well as what they're passionate about. So we've based the way this competency works, with the same way the Federal Aviation Authority, how they issue people pilot's licenses. So in South Africa, we have the CAA, and it's quite simple. You are either competent to fly an airplane successfully, you're not so competent at it, you're getting there, or you are extremely competent at doing it, and here's your license. And then it's also based on hours. And we're structuring it the same way with the students. Every day they've got a logbook, they've got a debriefing and a briefing in the beginning and the end of the day. And throughout this logbook and this process, they stay accountable to what they need to complete in order to get to where they want to go. So 3D printing or VR or Web3 products or solutions or anything that they're doing doesn't just become about the fun around it, but it's actually, this is the evidence that I'm building up towards creating a credible CV to be able to show to future employers or whatever they might need it for. So, daunting future. Elon Musk, he has taken us, we hear the buzzword fourth industrial revolution over and over again, but when he decided that he wanted to create a chip that went into the human skull, it subsequently pushed us into the fifth industrial revolution, where it's this complete integration with technology and the actual human body, as well as how it works to enhance us. And this is why I'm stressing this urgency for education, not just to change in terms of policy, but to have a solution that children have got an environment that they can be doing what they want to do, what they're passionate about, and what makes them happy, along with just options of what they have to do. Or not what they have to do, options of what they can do. So it's giving them that access to say, have you seen this? Or try this challenge out, and they'll subsequently lean towards what they're passionate about and what they love to do. And what our jobs subsequently become about is just merely connecting these students with the right thought leaders so that they can get that sort of real world exposure. Now, for the more fun part, I don't know what everyone voted for, but these are the three pieces of art that have been generated by AI. It's quite impressive. It uses an open source AI software that was also, funny enough, one of Elon Musk's projects. And it allows people to create these AI generated artworks that are completely original pieces of artworks. You wouldn't find this on Google if you try to do a reverse image search. And these are some of the things our students are engaging with. We've got one of our students actually doing market days where he's offering to sell this artwork to people right there on the spot and print it out on canvases. So right now where we're at, we're slowly growing our school. We host all sorts of events and fun activities for students. And at the moment, our biggest priority is now, how do we make education as affordable as possible and affordable for people to actually be able to get access to what we're doing. So more recently, we launched a 385 Rand a month platform that allows for students to get access to all these technologies, be introduced to different thought leaders, and then get access to courses. So it's all done on a platform called Discord, which is a gaming platform. So we decided that we would rather integrate with what students are using already instead of trying to bring them out of what they already know. So students start here, quite literally, and then they jump around during the day between the different topics and modules that they're interested in. So that could go anything from like coding. We've even got an exam room there for students that are busy writing exams. If students are writing IGCSE content, which is a British international curriculum, if they're looking for things like grade 7 subjects, or now if they're starting to do more interesting and fun things, everything from Web3, virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D printing, sustainable living, coding, electronics. And we've got lots of cool events and things that we do with our students. So that makes up what we're doing as Thought Hybrid International School. And as Joel, I greatly appreciate everyone's time, and thank you. Any questions? Maybe no one was there the entire time.
Thank you. Wow.
Everyone was
Three
still
phenomenal talks, Saul, Gia, and Joel. Thank you so much. I will give a formal thank you shortly, but if we could just go back in the chat box, Ryan, Nicole, maybe you can just help me and see what questions have popped. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Got a beautiful message here
Sorry.
from Jackie. Oh no. Yeah, Jackie Benson asked, Saul, are you there? Brilliant use of technology, and given the use of mobiles in South Africa, it makes sense, especially in rural areas, and yet the reception is not great. What are mobile companies doing to assist with this?
Yes, so there are. So one thing we're doing in rural areas is we're working with community internet service providers that have Wi-Fi in certain hub spots, and people can come there and use the Wi-Fi to access things like things on the smartphone. So we are working with a lot of community internet service providers. The reality is that the vast majority of people who need access to the service are actually sitting in urban areas where there's pretty good Wi-Fi, so and pretty good signal. Once we have reached everyone in the urban areas and in small towns, then we can move into the rural areas, and by then, look, over the next few years, we're going to see a massive improvement in reception. So we've just got to, I suppose we're quite comfortable that there's a big enough group of people who we still need to serve who do have good reception on cell phones before we need to worry about where there isn't.
And that leads me, Saul, to a question that I've just thought of. What about people, who can't really afford data and need data for your app? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so I suppose like the cell phone reception question, eventually, if we want to reach everyone, we're going to need reception to improve in rural areas. Similarly, when it comes to data, we've got a plan. It's an easier problem for us to solve than waiting for the cell phone networks to put more cell phone masts up. Right now, we're marketing to people and getting this into people's hands who can't afford medical scheme cover, they can't afford health insurance cover, they can't afford the GP, but they've got enough data to be able to access our services. And obviously, we build a smartphone app in a way that doesn't use as much data as a more heavily used app. And then we're talking to a number of providers about putting a data-free service in, where the data charges get reverse charged back to us, and they don't have to actually pay for the data themselves. And that's going to take a little bit of time from a technical perspective to solve.
Interesting, great. Gia, there's a question here from Susan. How do you integrate tech, give access to tech to your students at SEBA? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. So in a number of different ways. So firstly, all our students, we get Chromebooks so that they can work in their own time and online. And obviously through COVID, we had to pivot very quickly. So all our students got Chromebooks, we got access, gave them, so because SEBA, the students don't pay anything and we raise money from corporates and individuals, we had to get partners on board to help us. We've also zero-weighted some of our sites. And so all our students get Chromebooks and we help them get data. The biggest problem is if you're not in an area that's conducive, then you can't access it, just like Saul. So for us, we allowed students to come online to do data downloads, to come to campus to do data downloads or provide them with extra materials, and then they could take it back. We also have, through this process, digitized all our programs. So that's been a big project for us. So whilst the reality is that most of our students still really need that face-to-face interaction, we have created a hybrid model so the students can learn online and on campus. And then in the way that we teach, also because students are learning at different paces and many have gaps in their education and also sometimes don't feel comfortable asking a question, we do use technology in the classroom. So we use polls where students can post questions anonymously and while the class is happening in real time, and those can be answered. We have management information systems and learner management systems, and wherever we can, we're trying our best to make it as technology as the best tools to really enhance the learning, not to take it away. And so it's a big focus of ours. And we want our campus to be just as high tech and better than any other space, even though it's free to them. And it's really, we've worked really hard on creating an aspirational space that people want to pay for because of what we're offering and because of this new way of working and world. And we do coding and many other learning opportunities where technology is in the class.
Great, thank you. Joel, a question for you. Do all students work independently, or are there opportunities to learn as a group?
Awesome. So yes, so they work independently and there's opportunities to work in a group. But to answer to talk about our methodology, it's quite simple. What the science is showing us is that the daily contact time at traditional schools is sitting at about 5 to 6 hours, teacher to student contact time, where what is actually more required is more like 2 hours. And what I'm noticing is students are needing even less than that. So we start our sessions or whatever we're doing with students or whatever they're doing with initial briefings and then a debriefing. So and then if they need help during their time. So our students are working on an independent learning journey versus working in a space where a teacher is transferring knowledge over to them. So yeah.
Thank you. Saul, a question for you. How do you get GPs and specialists to sign up?
It's actually pretty easy. So first of all, there's a good value proposition for doctors to sign up with us. First of all, massive flexibility. So Saul, who I mentioned, is on this call. At the end of the year, he actually serves patients all around the country while he sits in a tent in Nature's Valley. So they've got the flexibility to work from where they want. They've got flexibility. We've got a lot of working mother doctors who work with us. We've got people that work in theatre and don't want to start their own practice. So that flexibility is really important, firstly. Second of all, they get to work as a team with other doctors. Most GPs work in isolation in practices. They don't work with other doctors. We've got a strong community with our doctors. And not only that, they get to work with nurses as well from all around the country. So that teamwork is a big draw card. Third of all, that when the doctors answer a call, the first call might be, somebody with flu sitting in Bryanston. The second call could be someone with HIV sitting in the Eastern Cape. The third call might be someone with a UTI sitting in Limpopo somewhere. So the range of people that the doctors get to talk to, the range of conditions outside of what might be happening in a physical local practice in their community is so diverse. The doctors are learning so much. And then lastly, the remuneration, the compensation is really good. Remember, they've got no admin, no overhead costs. They don't have to hire a secretary. They don't have to collect accounts. We do that on their behalf. They don't have to rent rooms anywhere. And we make sure that the way we compensate them is definitely more than they would get when they traditionally work as a locum. So we really make sure they're looked after in that sense too.
Amazing. Amazing. There've been some beautiful comments in the chat box. One that I'd just like to read out is the awesome intellectual capacity here is simply thrilling and super inspiring. And I think we're all feeling that collective intelligence and how these three change makers are making such a difference in their respective industries. So Saul, Gia, and Joel, thank you. It has been fantastic to hear your stories and hear how you and your businesses are changing the face of your industries. As you know, this conversation was all about disruption and innovation. And despite the planning and preparation in organizing an in-person event, we too had to deal with disruption and find a way to make it work. It is great we were able to go virtual and allow our reach to spread. Our speakers epitomize what it is to be a game changer in a very tough economic climate. Your tenacity, drive, focus, and resilience reaches beyond our belief. Thank you for sharing your messages with us and giving us a taste of what it is like to be in the life of an entrepreneurial game changer. Deloitte has kindly made a very generous donation to the JCS Tick for Food Bank in honor of our three speakers. Thank you to Ryan Durgan and Deloitte for their support and incredible partnership over the last several years. Your team goes beyond expectations, and it is a true gift we have your unbelievable support. For this, I am truly grateful. Please God, we will all be in person and in your magnificent building at our next event in October. A final thank you to all our guests for joining us online and for your understanding. In closing, we heard from 3 incredible entrepreneurs tonight, making a difference through their vision and determination. The impact on the people around them and those in their networks benefit in many ways. We as active citizens can impact our own networks and communities by doing a little more in building our beautiful South Africa. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for hosting
Thanks
us.
for the opportunity. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.